So is Japanese Breakfast a band or solo act? Michelle, make up your mind. Hello everyone, Cross here. So Japanese Breakfast is a musical project that's had an interesting origin and has recently become more renowned as the 2020s have hit, as the mastermind behind JBrekkie's music is Michelle Zauner, JB's leader, singer, and guitarist. She released a best-selling memoir, Crying in H Mart, and in that same year she would release Jubilee, and that would give her some attention from the Grammys with 2 nominations. In fact, that's how I discovered them. The name caught my attention, I listened to Be Sweet, and I never looked back. Before I go forward, I should mention that I'll interchangeably use Japanese Breakfast, JBrekkie, a nickname used to refer to Japanese Breakfast, or even just JB, and I'll put a counter after each one to see how much I use each one. While I mentioned her already, I need to talk more about Michelle. Michelle's journey is the story of perseverance after multiple failed musical projects and the death of her mother, which really changed the direction of her life. I'll talk more about that a little later when I get into the style category. So seeing the acclaim and success from Crying in H Mart and Jubilee in 2021, it makes you glad because she deserved it. I bring this background up because the underdog story can really make your connection with Japanese Breakfast stronger, and it's an important part of her story. I'm stopping the intro here because I can make these too long. When you see the next big project, you'll understand why I'm cutting this short.
Tell the man I'm coming.
So here's how this video will work. I'm going to cover the style of Japanese Breakfast so that the uninitiated can better understand what JBrekkies sound like, and this will help shape why I pick certain songs. I'll go over the albums before I cover each of the songs from that album, so we'll go from album, songs, then the next album, and so forth. This will help give some insight as to why I pick some of the albums and songs that I do. I'll cover the albums and songs in the order that I best recommend you check them out. That way once you get past the songs, you'll know which order to go from there. I will only pick at most 2 songs per album, and only 2 albums will get 2 songs. This is to encourage some variety so that it isn't just Jubilee and friends here. I'll have some honorable mentions so that you have some next steps, no covers or features. We're talking about Japanese Breakfast. Covers and features don't always define an artist or are representative of their style, so I won't include them here. Though one song is a gray area. I'll explain when I get to it. And just so you know, this is all my opinion. If you agree or disagree, comment and let me know why and what you would suggest instead. I'm curious to know. And with that being said, let's move on to the style. To explain the style of Japanese Breakfast, I would narrow it down to indie pop, dream pop, experimental pop, indie rock, with some elements of shoegaze and chamber pop. Each album has some other elements to set each one apart, but these are the core elements. Some songs focus on one or two over the other. Michelle keeps things simple. She has an idea and then she expands on it. Though I should pause and look at that shoegaze genre. Michelle describes JBrekkie as shoegaze inspired, and that's a key distinction. Most people would hesitate to call bands like JB and even Deftones shoegaze proper, but you can hear the influence on their sound. Shoegaze elitists will scoff at the idea of calling these artists shoegaze proper, but you can definitely see it in their sound. I would say Japanese Breakfast is more dream pop as opposed to shoegaze. I should probably explain the difference between these two genres, huh? I'm gonna refer to Fantano's video on shoegaze, and the guest he has on that video describes shoegaze as being a wall of sound that's fuzzy with distorted guitars and is dark. And dream pop has a wall of sound but has a more ethereal, light, and atmospheric feel. There's a lot of overlap, and these genres are often used interchangeably, but that's an incredibly oversimplified distinction. In a lot of Japanese Breakfast's music, there's a darker tone still, and it's reflected in Michelle's lyrics. And for the first 2 albums, Michelle was tackling the grief over the death of her mother, so it makes sense. And with Melancholy Brunettes returning to JBrekkie's dark sound, leads to JB's discography having an overall darker feel. But Japanese Breakfast is still a pop act, so it's not as dark as some goth bands can get. The music is simple, a lot of indie music is, but when you consider the live band has an additional guitarist, Peter Bradley, who's also Michelle's husband, bassist Devin Craig, and drummer and co-producer Craig Hendricks. They're the core members. However, they also have a keyboard player, Macy Stewart, a saxophone player, Adam Schwartz, and they have a string quartet as well. So while the music is simple and has an atmospheric feel, this should tell you that there's a little more going on the surface. And one last thing I want to note are that the album's runtimes, with the exception of the Sable OST, each are less than 40 minutes. Hell, Psychopomp is less than 30 minutes. I bring this up because with albums becoming less popular, so people stick to singles and certain songs, these albums are not as much of an investment compared to other artists, and they're tight, so there's less of an excuse to not listen to these full albums. Think of these albums compared to other albums as a snack, and other artist albums are more of a feast. This album still sounds like a Japanese breakfast album. Jubilee still has the lo-fi indie pop sound, but trades most of the shoegaze elements in favor of a more dream pop approach. It's a non-dark take on JBrekkie's sound, but it still is that sound. While it's still JB's best album, hence why I'm talking about it here, it sticks out a tad for not feeling as dark in comparison to everything else. The songs I picked and the singles are a whole are split, with the happy sounding songs like Be Sweet and Savage Good Boy. The darker tone of Posing in Bondage, and then Paprika and Slide Tackle are somewhere in between. As such, most of Jubilee's songs fit in either of these categories. The Happiness Mood is also a change in pace after the last two albums and a memoir tackling the grief surrounding the death of her mother. Needless to say, I can understand why Michelle would make an album like this. With that being said, I will still recommend this album to be the first one you should listen to, but with the caveat that the other albums are darker. You can also see it in Michelle's lyrics, at least in comparison to her other albums. Other than the singles, some recommendations are Kokomo, Indiana, Posing for Cars, and Sit. Now let's get into the sweet songs I picked from this album. My first song, and it's still my favorite, as someone who grew up listening to a lot of 80s music, new wave inspired songs are a weakness for me. I love my fucking synthesizers. I remember seeing the video and falling in love with the cheesy aesthetic fitting the music it's promoting. You're drawn in by Michelle's vocals.
Tell the man I'm coming.
And you have that ethereal dream pop sound, just with a new wave twist. The keyboards are fantastic. And the funkier elements with the bass in the background of the song give it some unique character. Honestly, the rhythm section as a whole is fantastic. I love the use of hi-hats as well. The guitars are toned down in comparison to some of the other songs, but they're there. That chorus, it's so catchy. This is probably Japanese breakfast at their most fun. And as a first taste of joyful JBrekkie, this is a great rendition of it. The male backing vocals aid in the catchiness.
So come and get your love.
And then after that, the portion with the vocal layering is, well, sweet.
Recognize your mistakes.
This song, being one of the poppiest songs in JB's discography, is the most earwormy, even if the intro gets stuck in your head. For the lyrics, Michelle is describing a story of someone who's on the verge of leaving their partner, and the protagonist is trying to get them to stay, urging them to stay and to make it up to them.
Make it up to me, you know it's better.
There's more going on in this fun pop song. Unrelated, but this MV is one of the most sapphic things I have ever seen.
So come and get your love.
And I love it for that, in that 80s inspired cheese. I love it. The costuming, on point. I don't recommend the song as the first, as it being representative of Japanese breakfast sound. I recommend it as the first, as it's JBrekkie at their most fun, the most addicting, like that sugary treat you wish you could eat but you know you shouldn't have. But you want something more representative of JB? Alright then.
Can you tell I've been posing?
This song is more of the traditional Japanese breakfast taste here, so I'm picking it as my second Jubilee pick. You have that darker feel that's a tad more shoegaze in favor of dream pop, but this is still dream pop. That intro and you're sucked in with Michelle's voice.
Can you tell I've been posing?
The song's tone is great. Especially with how it contrasts with Michelle's normally light voice.
This way alone for hours.
Before you know it, you're in the chorus and it has a haunting feeling.
Closeness. Proximity.
With Japanese breakfast, choruses are a tad unconventional like this one. But they still linger. One side of the brain is Be Sweet.
Be sweet to me, baby.
The other is Posing in Bondage.
Proximity.
stuck in my head for dramatically different reasons. For the music aspect, as opposed to new wave, this one has more of a synth pop feel, and could definitely fit on Church's Screen Violence.
I'm writing a book on how to stay conscious when you drown.
That's how well done it is, and how dark the vibe is. The guitars are present as they add to the reverb and distorted feel of the song. And the instrumentals after the chorus are a nice touch. It helped flesh out the song so much. Now I will address that there's an older, pseudo-lost version of this song that's very good too,
Can you tell I've been posing?
with a different vibe. I mostly addressed it in the way you would dress an elephant in the room. That and because it's worth going out of your way to check out. But Michelle, why is this no longer on streaming? Just wondering. The melancholy brunettes and sad women will like to know. I'm speaking on their behalf. For the lyrics, there's some strong ones here. The main one that catches my attention is the use of bondage as a metaphor of leaving yourself vulnerable with your partner whom you should trust. That's some deep stuff there. For this video, well, the comment section was funny, but the video itself also rather sapphic.
Hope you come home soon.
There's a lot of context missing by not seeing Savage Good Boy, but it's not necessary to view this one. I love the greenish filter, the shots isolating our characters until they finally meet, and that tight space remaining, just that they're isolated together now. And costuming, what is this outfit? I'm just curious. And the mouth blood? Michelle, if you see this video, can you direct a vampire music video for album 5? That'd be nice. So we're done with Jubilee. Let's move on to... Hey, it's the midpoint of the video. While you're still watching, be sure to like and subscribe so I know you're watching this video. And let's move on to the second half.
Our celebrities keep dying.
This is definitely the first darker album I would recommend. While Soft Sounds continues the darker sound of Japanese Breakfast's debut Psychopomp, you get to hear more experimentation, namely with the elements of space pop and chamber pop. In some ways, we are transitioning from the darker sound of Psychopomp to the lighter sounds of Jubilee. Think of it like we got most of the grief out of Psychopomp, we're still processing and accepting the grief here on Soft Sounds, and Jubilee is moving on. And this is validated by Michelle's experience. When she was promoting Psychopomp, she would get asked about her mom's death, and it would reopen the wounds she thought she had fully gotten out. You can hear experimentations with lead single The Machinist,
The kingdom of your demons.
with the creative use of autotune giving a first taste of the space influence we'll hear on this album. This album's main critique is a lack of focus. While I can see it, this album still flows together really well, and I could see the lack of focus as exploring different regional sounds of another planet. It's almost like it's in the album's name or something. This album has loads of fan favorite songs, like the album Deep Cuts, Till Death, and Jimmy Fallon Big. While this album is space pop, it still has the shoegaze dream pop leaning moments too. This is the second album I would recommend, and a good first taste of one of the darker albums, and you'll see why in Michelle's lyrics.
Is not real.
Remember that rule that I mentioned about covers? So on a surface level, this kinda is one, but not really. This is a remake of a song by Michelle's previous band, Little Big League. However, that song originates from Day 6. No, not that one. A demo off of June by, oh, would you look at that, Japanese Breakfast. Confused? Don't worry. Michelle recycles ideas and reinterprets her own songs, and it works out well for her. While Jubilee stopped using the Bandcamp releases, though she should look back there, each of her albums and even her last Little Big League album have older songs redone. So just know, if you like a song, there's probably another version of it, and all versions are pretty decent too. Let's not ignore that. This song is representative of this thing that Michelle does. As for the Soft Sounds version, this one is the best. It has that soft start, and the chorus is just lovely.
I can't get you off.
In many ways, this is Japanese Breakfast at their most simplistic and pretty. Michelle's vocals truly are the highlight.
I can't get you off in general.
This song is peaceful, and the guitars are scaled back, but we still have that low-key guitar solo, and it's nice. This is a nice song to disassociate to and just have a calming effect while you're alone, relaxing, and recharging your battery. This is probably one of JBrekkie's most beautiful songs when I really think about it. The rhythm section is scaled back here, though you can still hear them if you look for them. But they really are playing a backseat to the vocals and guitars. The guitar reverb is overpowering everything. but not overshadowing Michelle's vocals like how you would expect a shoegaze or dream pop album or song would. Lyrically, this is about someone who wants their partner to love them back as much as she does. She doesn't want to be the second opinion, about lacking that self-confidence and needed in a relationship as well.
You don't like how I look, then leave.
But understanding that you still want to be loved by that individual as well.
I want you and you want.
I like this MV. It's scaled back, and that cold lighting and the low-scale teen romance drama has that nice indie short film feeling. And then the inserts of Michelle in the hallway to help remind you that this is an MV. The gaffer, key grip, and colorist did a great job of giving this video the aesthetic with the lights and color grading. A simple video befitting a simple song, and there's nothing wrong with simple. So I've mentioned a few times how the death of Michelle's mother influenced the sound of Japanese Breakfast. Isn't it about time I actually discuss a song that tackles that subject? In my opinion, this one is the best. That guitar intro sucks you in. It feels like something that would be played at an unplugged grunge show, just with an electric guitar instead. The guitars are slightly louder than Michelle's vocals, like how a shoegaze song would be. Now you can still hear Michelle's voice and get what the lyrics says she's singing about. I love how Michelle's singing and guitars start ramping up as we get to the chorus, and once that chorus hits,
Your body's a blade that cuts a path from day to day.
we hear more of the interesting instrumentation. And that chorus is hauntingly beautiful. There's a hint of sadness shown in Michelle's voice. It's like there's an emotion being presented yet contained. This song almost has a singer-songwriter vibe, but with an indie rock vibe instead. Now lyrically, we have a lot more going on here. Now when you look at the Genius page, it appears simple and that there isn't a lot there, but it's actually rather telling. This song is about struggling to get through a hard time. The opening verse is Michelle telling herself to find a bright spot. The chorus is her trying to remain strong, but feeling rather disassociated. The final verse is the feeling of failing. In the immediate aftermath of a painful memory, and how painful the moving along progress sucks. Her childhood home was sold, the house that had plenty of happy memories, but also some painful memories associated with it, but it's to reconcile. Her past is being sold. The lyrics are simple, but during a tough time and grieving, the feelings and thoughts are raw. They're not sugar-coated. When the song was originally released, it was called My Mommy Is Sick. It doesn't get more blunt than that. As for the MV, it's beautiful. It has that feel of a home movie someone makes to celebrate the life of someone else. This being her mom, who's presented in photos and even recreated in some as well, and her being in a field similar to the home she grew up in, along with the activities she would have done in her free time as well. It's a simplified beauty that pays tribute.